All right, welcome to episode 16 of the Jake Blanchard podcast. Before we dive in today, we are brought to you by Fellowship Brands, men grooming products, premium grooming products for today's modern man. Go to fellowshipbrand.com and check them out today. My guest today is Nolan Nitschke. Nolan is an award-winning photographer and gallery owner out of Mammoth Lakes, California. He's been published in several magazines, including Outdoor Photographer, and featured on websites like Yahoo and the Daily Mail. And on 3 separate occasions has had his work featured in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. He's had 4 different exhibitions at the G2 Gallery in Venice Beach. He was a featured artist at Lava Light Gallery on the Big Island of Hawaii. And he owns his own gallery, nestled safely in the Eastern Sierras, the Sierra Light Gallery. Nolan, my friend, it's cool to have you on the podcast, man.
Jake, it's my pleasure, man. It's good to see you.
Dude, so, one of the things that I didn't read off in your accomplishments, and I'm sure you have several photos around the gallery, was you actually were the photographer at my wedding. And I wanted to bring that up today on the podcast, first thing out of the gates. I'm likely the only humans, my wife and I, that you've taken photos of, maybe because you're kind of known for your outdoor photography. Is that right?
Yeah. So you're one of 2.
Okay.
I did your wedding and my sister's, and those are the only ones I've done, and those are the only ones that I will do.
Well, man, I certainly appreciate doing that. And by the way, that was about 11 or 12 years ago. So, I mean, you've had a lot going on over the years, and I want to just dive right into it. I got to know you while we were in college together. We actually lived right next door to one another, built a friendship over the years, and I have been watching your career in photography ever since. I have to admit that 12, 13 years ago, when you're telling me, hey man, I'm going to be a photographer, that's what I'm going to do with my life. And I mean, I used to go over to your place and look at your computer and see these photos that you've taken, and I'm like, yeah, he's really good at it. But like, I didn't know that was like a thing that you can end up doing long-term, but you're actually like really well known for this kind of stuff, especially the outdoor photography. And so, take me through that. Like, what has this journey been like? How did you get into photography? And then how did this like passion just turn into owning a gallery and being published in all these different publications?
Well, I want to take a quick step back because I feel like I should say that, the only reason I photographed your guys' wedding was because we were in college and I was so damn poor. I couldn't like get you guys a nice wedding gift or anything. So, that seemed like the appropriate thing to do. It was either that or like a big box of ramen for your room, your dorm room. I don't know.
Dude, I treasure it. I very, very much treasure the image.
But no, it's been, it's been 16 years now, believe it or not, which is kind of crazy. Wow. And it's been a crazy ride. I've gotten really, really lucky and fortunate along the way. And I'm actually, I've been doing this for so long, and so much has changed since we were hanging out all the time. I really want to know, like, how crazed was I back then? Because I'm pretty sure I was pretty nutso about this stuff. And over time you forget all this. And I kind of want to hear your perspective.
Here's the thing. Like, there was not a time that, and I used to go to your place at least once or twice a week for about the year that we lived across from each other. You were always on that computer, man. I mean, I'd be standing behind you having a conversation with you, and you'd have your Photoshop up, or you'd be like, looking at this or that, or showing me some location that you were going to go to or hike into, or, something really cool. So I would say that I cannot remember a time talking to you and not also talking about photography. So I'd say you're pretty crazed, but I mean, that's passion, right? That's drive. That's being connected to, a real self-awareness about what you want to do. So madness, I think, is beneficial, I think, in a lot of cases.
Well, little do you know, I'm actually working on photos right now while doing this interview simultaneously.
Are you?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. But yeah, dude, so when did you start taking photos? Like, when did you decide that like that was something that you liked doing?
So it was right at the end of high school. I was, backpacking and hiking like crazy. We're still here in Bishop in the Eastern Sierras, so we have some of the most beautiful trails, mountains you're going to find anywhere in the world. So I was just kind of backpacking and hiking anyways. And it was after a couple trips, you're back in the wilderness and you see so many beautiful things. And I kind of just decided, like, I really need to get like a camera just for documentation. Like, oh, I've been here. I don't want to forget these things. And I got a little 3 megapixel point and shoot. You probably remember that little camera I had on my desk all the time.
Yeah.
And which was like the best point and shoot you could get at the time. It was a little Canon. And so I took that with me on, I think, 2 hikes or 2 backpacks, and was like, immediately was like, okay, this thing is not going to cut it. Like, I need more control. And once that kind of idea creeped into my head, it was just a downhill slide from there. It's been a 16-year downward slide that hasn't stopped.
So, and then specifically, I'd say, like, you've always had a connection with nature then, just geographically where you grew up. And so then you're bolting the photography on top of that. And then those two worlds kind of merge then. Yeah.
There was always this natural appreciation, and I grew up hiking, fishing, camping everywhere around here with my dad. And so, the photography just latched itself onto that, what I was already doing naturally. And what really became interesting and really kind of drove it was, like, I feel like no matter where you grow up, it's hard to have an appreciation for what's there, what you really have, until you leave. And so, one of the biggest things for me going to Boise State, with you, one of the biggest things I learned there was what was actually in my backyard, and not taking it for granted. And so, when I would come home on our Christmas breaks, spring breaks, summers, whatever I could get away, as you know, I would just come back and have this entirely new perspective on what my backyard really was and what was there, and just how incredibly beautiful it is. And so the camera, kind of that motivation, and then, already loving the outdoors and nature and wanting to be out there, and coming home and really realizing, like, holy shit, I live in one of the most beautiful places in the world. Why is it taking me so long to realize this? All that kind of culminated into kind of where we are now.
So then how did you go from, like, leaving college, coming back into Bishop and the Mammoth Lakes area? And then how long did it take to open up your gallery there? Like, what were you doing in between?
So when I, in college, which you probably remember, I was getting a little frustrated with some of the classes. I never intended on becoming a photographer, an artist, anything where I am now. So once I kind of was moving in that direction, found some limitations at the college. I ended up, teaching myself things about the programs and about, the camera that much, much faster than the teachers could provide. And you may remember I was actually, like, becoming an unpaid, like, teacher's assistant on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because I was picking it up so much faster than the class could provide. So I just got kind of unmotivated and frustrated in that scenario. It was too slow. And so that's when I decided, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to move home. And I got a job with the Forest Service, actually. So kind of those, kind of making that decision to leave, and then getting a job with the Forest Service. I was like, yeah, I think I've done what I can here. So I moved back, and I ended up working with the U.S. Forest Service for 7 years. 7 years, yeah. And so that was an interesting job that kind of propelled the photography also, because I was on a wilderness trails crew for 7 years. So we would go into the backcountry for 9 days at a time, and, there's no phones, no nothing back there. And we would work, and we would build the actual hiking trails. We would do creek mitigations. We do meadow restoration. So all this really super hands-on natural work anywhere, up at, 8, 9, 10, 11,000 feet. And we'd be back there for 9 days at a time. And so, of course, I would always bring my camera with me, and we never worked during sunrise or sunset. So I would kind of do that in my off time. during the non-working hours back there. And so that kind of propelled it forward even more. Every decision has kind of just kept propelling it. The problem with the Forest Service job is it was very difficult to get a permanent position there. A lot of the work was 7 to 8 months out of the year. Once the winters hit, you can't really get into the mountains and do any kind of, restoration work, for instance. You can't really build trails when there's 12 feet of snow sitting on top of them.
That's a good point.
So I would take those months where, I would get laid off, the seasonal layoff, and just plow into the photography, all the stuff that I had shot during the season, working on the website, working on printing, just really taking those months off to keep refining skills, identifying what I needed to keep working on and where I needed to go. And so after about 7 years, at some point a financial decision had to be made. And so I ended up leaving the Forest Service because I couldn't get a full-time job there. I actually ended up working at doing IT administration for a title and escrow company around here called Mono Title. I did that for 3 years. And during that time, I had established a relationship with a gallery up here in Mammoth already. It was just called the Mammoth Gallery. And for quite a few years, I became their featured artist. And another company had come in and bought the building that they were in. They decided they weren't going to move the gallery and they were just going to close. And so as soon as they told me that, I started looking for my own spot, and here we are.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you opened that gallery how many years ago?
About 3.5 years ago.
About 3.5 years ago. And so I want folks to know, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm about to show you a part of my office that you don't usually get to see. But when Nolan opened up the gallery, one of the first things I wanted, and if you can see, I have a big metal print. And what lake is that again?
That's Chickenfoot Lake.
Chickenfoot Lake. And it is just, it's stunning. It's I don't even remember how big that thing is, but it's gigantic on my wall. I actually painted the colors of my office around it to kind of give it kind of this dark feel in here. I got some lighting on it just because it's a very peaceful scene for me. It's obviously a connection to you and your success as well, Nolan, and something that I'm proud to have in my office here. But your spot now, you said it's about 1,500 square feet, something like that.
Yeah.
Out in Mammoth Lakes. And how has it been, man? You've been open for 3.5 years. What's the last couple of months been like? What's the fires been like? You got a lot of stuff going on with COVIDs and fires.
Man, it's been an interesting year, to say the least. With everything that's gone on, I've come out, very fortunate, a lot more fortunate than I know a lot of people have. And so I really count my blessings. When I opened this gallery on my own, I kind of opened it with the intent of, this is my grand experiment. Like, can this even work, or am I just going to fall flat on my ass right off the bat? Yeah. So for the first 7 months of actually opening this gallery, I was manning the gallery and working my IT job. I went 7.5 months without a single day off. I was trying to get that company, which I cared about deeply. I was trying to make sure that they were going to get nice and settled with me leaving, making sure that they had the appropriate backup. Like I said, they're pretty much family. They're family as far as I'm concerned. So I wanted to leave them in the best hands possible, at the same time trying to, kind of go down my own path. And it's been better than I could have even imagined right off the get-go. People were super excited, impressed. And every day I was just watching people come in the door and just watching their jaws drop. And it was a big confidence boost. Business-wise was fantastic. Then this year hit, which was weird. So I had to, not by, my own volition, but I had to close for 3 months solid, during the initial lockdown, which totally understand and agree with. Then I got to open for a month maybe. And then all the wildfires in California started. And so I got these big air filters. I tried everything I could to keep the smoke out of here and keep it operational. And it was a fruitless effort. We had in Mammoth Lakes particularly, we didn't have any direct fires here. We had the creek fire that got very close, but we were completely inundated with smoke for 3 months. We had multiple days. We had a 2400 AQI, which the AQI, the top of the meter, the dangerous or the hazardous meter only goes to 500. So we were almost 5 times over that. We had the worst air quality in the world weeks on end, and it was just brutal in every regard.
You sent me a text message that looked apocalyptic.
Yeah,
I was just like, because we were originally going to do this podcast last month.
Yes.
I texted, or maybe the month before, I can't remember when, but I was right in the middle of when the fires are happening. You're like, hey man, I'd love to do the podcast, but I'm kind of dealing with the poorest air quality in the history of man, like basically sucking up volcano fumes.
Yeah.
So then you boogied out of Mammoth for a little bit, and then when did you get back to the gallery?
So I've been, the fires, we finally got a decent snowstorm a couple weeks ago, and that really was kind of the final kibosh on getting this fire out. So the last couple weeks have been some semblance of normalcy this year. Yeah. And so now we're just getting ready for the Black Friday weekend and all that kind of fun stuff.
Well, dude, I'm going to share my screen here. And I'd love for you to, you sent me a couple of photos before, the ones that were featured in the Smithsonian.
Oh yeah.
And then also you've got a few new galleries, new releases coming out as well. Can you see my screen all right, Nolan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, let me just zoom in here a little bit. So what am I looking at here? Cardinal Pond. Maybe talk us through this.
Yeah.
I'd love a like kind of an artistic take on this as well. Like if you could kind of narrate this in a way that maybe expands my mind into looking at art or photography a little different.
So this is one of the ones that I got featured in the Smithsonian in D.C., which was cool. This was one that I actually did not expect to get featured or to get displayed in there. Because it is kind of a different image from a lot of the, nature landscape photography that you'll see. So this is Peak Fall Colors, one of our best canyons, 4 Fall Colors, Bishop Canyon, which is right above Bishop, California. And this is a little fishing pond that's surrounded by these huge granite boulders. And on the backside of those boulders is surrounded by aspens. And so I went up during an absolutely freezing morning. How the water wasn't frozen, I have no idea. But it was just kind of the abstractness of this scene is what really kind of struck me. And along with that, you kind of have this cool toned granite boulder with these bright yellow leaves behind it. So you're getting a nice mix of colors in there also. And if you look close, or if you saw the print really big, right in the middle of the water, there's actually a little tiny ripple that's kind of breaking that perfect reflection. And they cut from a little fish breaking the water, grabbing an insect, I would guess. You see those little ripples like on the boulder right there. So it's almost, this absolute perfect reflection of this abstract scene with just this little band that breaks that perfect reflection.
Wow. Hey, and so thank you for that. And we got 2 or 3 more. I'd love to hear you kind of walk through them. This one is absolutely incredible. A lot of people take photos of volcanoes, man. And to take a photo of, it's such a popular thing for people who are around it. Obviously, that's the first thing you want to do is take a photo. But to have a photo featured in the Smithsonian of kind of a lava flow, that's gotta feel pretty good, man.
Yeah. So that one, I have to give a big shout out to my Hawaii boys, CJ Kell and Nick Selway over at Lava Light Galleries. They've probably photographed the Hawaiian volcanoes more than anyone in the world. And I've known those guys for a very long time. And I had always told them, if that lava ever hits the ocean, like, tell me, I'll get out immediately. Like, that was one of my really big bucket list, not only to photograph, but just to experience, was always one of my big bucket list items. And so we that started going in. That was the 61G flow that was at the end of 2016. Yeah, I think it was the end of 2016. and they called up and said, yeah, you should probably think about coming out here. And so I got out there. I went out there for 2 weeks, I believe. And we drove over to that side of the island and hiked out 6 mornings in a row. We would leave at 3 o'clock in the morning and start hiking out on the lava fields. And we'd photograph, the pre-sunrise, the sunrise, the first light kind of hitting everything. And then we'd hike back, pass out for a couple hours, and do it over again 6 days in a row.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible, man. This is such a beautiful, beautiful photo.
Craziest thing I've ever seen in my life, hands down.
Really?
Oh yeah.
What were the sounds like? Does that just hiss and sizzle and pop and just?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of the noise is, which you can't see in this exact photo, but a lot of the noise is the waves crashing into that. This one I kind of photographed it with the wave pulling away, so it really show the cool drips in the rock formation. But when the wave crashes into that lava, it just shoots up these massive steam plumes, and it boils and it hisses. We had a couple mornings where we would see these like little miniature explosions where it would just shoot rocks off into the ocean. Little collapses happening. You'll see that bench, like parts of that bench right there will just start falling off into the ocean, and new drips will start coming out and forming. And it looked completely different every single day that we would see it, because it's always changing, moving. It's building new land while the ocean's taking it away, and it's crazy.
Well, and then let's check out this last one here that you sent over. Absolutely stunning here. Mount Whitney at moonrise. So maybe educate someone like me. You've tried to explain this whole like exposure thing to me before, because I believe the photo that I have in here was done at moonlight, obviously. But like, how does this work, and why does that house look like the sun's shining on it?
So this is the very summit of Mount Whitney. So 14,005. I don't remember. They change the number every couple years, but so this one. I knew that there was a full moon rising, and decided to hike up this night specifically to capture something like this. I hadn't been up to the summit before, so I was kind of going up blind, which is a very long and arduous task to go up there not really knowing what the scene looks like. But since we're at 14.5, so we're at the tallest peak in the Sierras. So what's interesting about this scene is that, in the background, that's the full moon rising. And what's actually catching light is the setting sun. So it's that kind of deep sunset light that's still reflecting onto this side of the mountain. Because when you have a full moon, it's going at the exact opposite of the sun. That's how it gets its full brightness. So if you're up high enough and you don't have obstructions to the east and to the west, you can get the moon rising with like residual sunlight coming in on the other side.
That's super cool, man. Thanks for explaining that. You just kind of just threw on the backpack and went up blind. Did you stay up there that night, or did you hike back down, or like, how's that work?
So I did sleep up on the summit that night. It was probably one of the worst evenings I've had. It's really not easy to sleep that high. I'm really lucky I don't deal with a whole lot of elevation sickness or altitude sickness. I think just because I've grown up around here, so it really doesn't hit me too bad. The only things that I really noticed, especially spending that many hours up there, I had to force myself to eat a little bit. I mean, you're burning crazy calories. You're going up to 14.5. It's 11 miles each way. So you're burning calories like a madman. And I had to kind of force myself to eat just because I knew I needed those calories. It was really, I didn't have much of an appetite, so I kind of had to force some food down.
Okay.
And then trying to sleep, it was difficult to get my heart rate down to a comfortable level to actually sleep. So really the whole night, it was like a half sleep.
It was kind of like you had a cup of coffee a little too late kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of similar. Like there was no deep sleep. You're half awake the whole time. You just can't get your body to relax enough and your heart rate to mellow down to a normal sleeping level, at least for me. But like I said, I'm really, really lucky. That's the worst of it that I had. So.
Well, my man, you sent me a couple of links, and I'm hoping I can share those on the screen share as well. Would that be all right if I could
Yep.
show what you've got coming? Um,
Yeah.
so you sent me this link here about some new releases, specifically around Hawaii, and I believe you were up there. Would you say March of this
Yeah.
year? So
Yeah.
let's
So
talk through that.
that was a real interesting time to not be home. Um, so I actually I had a trip planned over there to do specifically what's showing on your screen. I really wanted to get into the water and do this wave photography with my buddy CJ Kale. Shout out again over on the Big Island. And so I had this trip planned. It was the beginning of March, and really when I had left, you know, COVID was already, a thing. But really when I had left, it was only like Italy was really struggling. They were going through their really big first wave. And there was a couple cases in New York. And so, my dumb ass, I'm like, oh, I should be fine. Like I should be able to go over there for 2 weeks and nothing will be wrong. And boy, was I wrong. So, as I'm over there, we're photographing all these scenes and just, every day looking on the news like, oh shit, this is getting way worse than I thought. And so I actually ended up leaving Hawaii on the day that they shut down the islands, essentially. No incoming travelers. They closed down, they did their business closures. They shut down all the beaches. They went into their, big lockdown. And I flew back that day or that night, which right then was pretty damn horrifying. Jumping on a plane, knowing you have to go through 3 airports and with a bunch of other people on the plane, and anyone even makes a sniffle, you're looking at them like, what the hell was that? Like, and so then it got even weirder, let alone it just being strange flying on an airplane right then. I was coming back to my home and my wife was sick. And so I'm talking with her. I'm like, what are we going to do? Like, so she went and got tested for COVID. She had a cold or a flu or something, kind of the same symptoms. And she went and got a test, but she didn't get the test back for like 14 days. And, my wife has, some autoimmune issues, and I had just gone through 3 airports. I was like, well, shit, what if I caught this? I've been traveling when you really should not have been traveling at all, but I didn't really have a choice. So I was super concerned that maybe I had it, maybe I was asymptomatic and could give it to her, So we were in this really weird situation. So I got home and we just made the decision. I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to live in the garage for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I literally spent 14 days in my garage, just drinking and editing photos and watching Star Wars movies and probably drinking a little too much. I was kind of back in the college days at that point. Ooh, I haven't been on a bender like this in years.
That's well, you got some focus time. You kept your loved ones safe. I mean, I think it's you had a win, but it looks like mission accomplished here with your Hawaii trip, man.
Yeah. So I mean, I got some great images. That lockdown time in the garage really allowed me to just kind of plow through all the images and get them done and ready. I still haven't released these ones specifically. Usually when I put out a new gallery like this, I like to do a nice write-up, kind of talk about the things we're talking about now. And it's just been such a weird time. I've been kind of like struggling to put my thoughts about all of this on paper. So I've kind of just been holding on to it, and maybe when I feel a little more better about the whole situation, I might release these. I really don't know, but it's been really hard for me to all of this happened during this strange quarantine pandemic time, and I don't really know, I guess, fully what I think about the whole situation and how to articulate that into a gallery like this.
For sure. Like, I just wanted to call out this particular photo. This big beach barrel, dude. The water, the way that it is before it crashes into the wave, like just kind of like getting to see that little bit of a, whatever that is, undertow or whatever you would call that. Like, That's a pretty incredible shot. I mean, because it looks very like gentle, but that's, within this roar of the barrel, and obviously with the kind of the mountain or whatever that is, the plateau or the hillside there in the back. It's a pretty sweet photo here, man.
Well, I will tell you, it might look gentle and nice, but that wave, it rocked my world pretty good. I'm in a really great position to get the photo. I was also in a very great position for that wave to pick me up and slam me straight onto my back into the shallow surf and knock the wind out of me.
Is that what happened there?
Oh yeah, it hurt. It hurt real good.
and then you've got here. Let's hop over to this landscape gallery that you're putting out as well. Maybe talk a little bit about these fall colors, and what is this all about?
So this gallery right here, I made this gallery in about 5 to 6 days of shooting. So we had really, really nice fall colors this year. I think that our mountains being so incredibly inundated with smoke for almost the whole summer actually protected the aspens and kept some moisture in them, allowing them to actually go as crazy with the color as they did. Because otherwise we're in a pretty nasty drought right at the moment. And so these theoretically should have dried up and we shouldn't have had anything at all this fall as far as the color goes. But I think actually the smoke saved the trees from just getting baked by the sun all summer. That being said, while the only reason I spent 5-6 days shooting these was because those were the only days we had clear of smoke while the colors were going off like this. So it was really, really challenging to figure out where the color is the best on a random day that the smoke might not be around. It was challenging, but for just a couple of days of shooting and just going out like a madman, I'm really happy with the gallery set. I'm really excited to release these and show people. They're very different for fall color scenes, I think, especially for around here in the Eastern Sierra. I think they're pretty unique. I kind of look at this gallery and I almost think like some of the somberness and the weirdness of the year kind of made its way into these images. I feel like they're a little more like on a darker emotional side, especially for fall color images. They're not just these super vibrant kind of photos. And I didn't necessarily do that purposefully, but that's just kind of how it seems like it's coming out in the long run here. So
yeah, it seems like the color was just kind of added to them. I mean, I'm not like an art whatever. They look more painted than they do like photography. They're more aspirational than realistic. It's very cool to be able to capture that uniqueness this year in the Sierras for sure. Let me stop sharing my screen here. I'll get back to you, Nolan. So you've got, we're taking a little sneak peek at some of the upcoming work. I appreciate you walking us through some of those images. Talked a little bit about, big metal print in my office and some of the other things. Like I guess one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, and we touched on this earlier, but maybe we can unpack this a little bit more, is just what is it inside of you that drives you to keep trying to perfect your game? Because a lot of this podcast is about that. I love to touch on passion projects. I love to touch on when passion becomes business. I think that's such an important thing for people to find that in their life, and I think it's a big struggle. Is like everybody raises their hand. And of course, they say the first thing is like, I just want to do something that I love. Right. And I think aspirationally, many of us have that. If we have to work and make money, that we might as well be doing something that we really, really enjoy. But so few of us get to do that. But, prior, you made the sacrifice, right? I mean, you sacrificed your time. You put all the chips in that said, I'm going to put myself in a position that I'm always going to be around opportunities to take photos, and I'm going to keep editing photos, and it's going to be something. And what is that nugget for you that drove you? Was it an ideal future state? Was it like something someone said? Like what? Can you wrap your arms around it?
That's a loaded question and a very good one. Um, I think a lot of it was just like, I can't even say it was conscious in a lot of ways. It wasn't necessarily a decision. A lot of the business aspects have definitely been a decision. Like those were very, very well thought out. I'm super lucky that my wife is so freaking awesome that, I kind of gave her this proposal like, hey, what do you think about trying this? And I'm really, really fortunate that she had enough confidence in me and that we could make this a success. And we had very long conversations and she was like, I'm on board, let's do this. So I'm really lucky in the business regard to that. As far as like the artistic pursuit, I get weird motivations. And like I said, a lot of the time they're not necessarily conscious. I think one of the big things is I guess it's almost kind of like a runner's high or like a workout kind of, like this endorphin rush. Like when I'm out in the field and I'm photographing this stuff, I'm not really like thinking. As weird as that sounds, like I'm kind of just in this like neutral mental place where I'm just kind of taking everything in. And so it's kind of a nice brain reset almost, because like when you think like, oh, I'm out here, I need to be thinking like dial this technically and how can I do this, that, and that. There's not a whole lot of, it sounds really bad. There's not a whole lot of thought process going on. It's just kind of like being in the moment and kind of going with the flow of everything. And I think a lot of it too is being extremely comfortable with failure. I'm my own worst critic, hands down. And so, like I just go out. I don't get a photograph that I would show anyone every time that I go out. Not even close. It's maybe every 4, 5, 6 times. Maybe I'll get something that I actually would show someone or potentially put in the gallery or put in the new releases. So I like the failure of it doesn't bother me at all. Like it's wholeheartedly expected, and I get this whole other benefit out of it. It's not just, oh, I got this amazing photo, I can sell it, whatever. I still get to go out and, okay, maybe the sunrise didn't, explode like I thought or whatever, but I'm still sitting outside in a beautiful valley, staring at mountains, drinking a nice cup of coffee, like by myself. One of the things I really, really love is, I love going up to the bristlecone pine forest. They're, these 4,000 plus year old trees up at between 9,000 and 11,000 feet. Going up there in the off season by myself. I go up there for sunrise, and whether I get a photo or not, I literally just spent the morning with a 4,000-year-old tree watching the day start. And if that doesn't give you perspective on your own life, I don't know what will. But
so what I would distill that down to is that you're in love with the process. Like you've really found a way to love the process of doing it. And you understand that there's definitely outcomes for the best quality work that you're producing, but like the value to you is incremental. Like every time you go out, every time you experience, and then you get those bursts, as opposed to being the disappointed fisherman coming home.
Yeah.
You're still, your perspective is just saying, hey man, I had a cup of coffee at a beautiful building and then I'm going into work today, that kind of thing. That's awesome to hear that perspective. Let's maybe give some advice out there, man. Maybe if you're a young, aspiring, or even an older aspiring photographer, and you see yourself having a gallery one day, what's maybe some advice that you'd put out, some pitfalls and things along the way?
So there's two major things that I teach workshops and I teach individual clients, different aspects of photography. And the first thing that I will say is you're not going to get good in a short amount of time. It just doesn't happen. For me, I don't think things really clicked for 5 years of doing it nonstop. Talking with some of my really close personal friends and fellow colleagues, it takes years. Like you're not just going to come out, kill it. You're going to get lucky a couple times, yes, for sure. but there's so much more involved with this than just a pretty picture. It's developing your eye, developing your relationship outside and your comfort level, and somehow formulating that into a form of art. So it's really unique, and it just takes time. It takes time to develop all of that. So it's if you're going to get started, don't get disappointed if you're not a famous photographer in 6 months, because it's not going to happen. It's going to take a few years, and it takes a lot of work. The other thing that I see a lot too, there's been some interesting conversations that we've been having about this, is the social media aspect of all of this. As you probably know, I've, for the most part, completely withdrawn from all social media, because it's just kind of become a shit show when it comes to photography. There's so much, it comes down to the motivation of all of this. If your motivation is just to be told how awesome you are on Instagram, you're not going to last very long. If your motivation is to connect with this stuff and pursue it and get better and develop that relationship, it's going to be 10 times more rewarding than having random people tell you how awesome you are when you're really not that awesome.
Yeah.
There's this weird people's egos get bloated way too fast, and they don't realize in the grand scheme of the history of photography where they are. And that's another thing. People don't study the history of this at all. They just jump in and think, oh, well, photography's always been Instagram, and it's not even close.
Right.
And so, having a good mentor, someone that'll tell you you suck, that's horrible. Like, you have to have that in your life. If you get this, like I said, this bloated, weird ego, because all Instagram, all they do is tell everyone how awesome they are. The other aspect of the social media thing too is people are only doing this, like I said, for these, I want the attention. And that's leading to a lot of like fake photography, digital art type, where they go out, and this kind of ties back into that being comfortable with failure. Is, they'll go out, oh, well, I drove 5 hours to get to this spot and the sunrise didn't happen, but I put in the work for it. So I feel, I'm obligated to throw in a fake sunset, to throw in these fake clouds, because I didn't get what I wanted, even though I drove 4 hours.
Right.
So there's, I feel like the social media aspect of this is driving a lot of people to not be comfortable with the failure also. And I think that's just such an integral part of this, especially if you want to, be good, you have to fail.
Well, yeah. And I think I posted the other day, I made a social media post about faking it until you make it. And I don't like that expression. Yeah. I understand the expression. I don't always care for it in the sense that you just do the work until you make it. And I think that that's what you're really talking about right now is, like, fakes are for fools to admire. Right. I mean, that is real. And you can tell, a fake piece of art, and you're not necessarily willing to pay the money for it. Right. I mean, like, somebody's Instagram photo might look cool, but is it worth, putting up some coin and putting it and printing it on the wall? It may be, but is it consistent? Is it tied to an artist? Does it leave a legacy? I'm not sure. And I think that that's really what you're doing here is in the spirit of photography and what it has traditionally been known. You're one of those people who are a true appreciator of the art and continuing to build your brand, your personal brand. And you're not doing it on social media. You're not doing it in these other areas. You're doing it by, word of mouth and traditional ways as well. But with that said, where do people find you, like on the internets?
Yeah. So I do have social media accounts. I'm probably the worst photographer in the world at actually doing anything on them. Yeah. But the best place is my website, www.thesierralight.com. If you can't make it to Mammoth Lakes, if you can make it to Mammoth Lakes, the website fails in comparison to what you can see in here. As you can tell behind me, there's a 100-inch photograph behind me. You're not going to be able to see that on the website. So,
for sure, man. What else, man? Is there any stones we want to unturn before we go? Do you have any questions for me, Nolan? It's been a long time since we've gotten to chat. You said You might have some questions for me, but I know we covered a lot.
Well, I think that we have a funny history together, and I just wanted to get you to confirm now, even though we did on the phone, that, as your podcast progresses and it gets a little more comfortable, that you're going to have me back on and we can share some funny stories in the future.
Oh, yeah.
I just want you to commit to that right now on the blog, on the podcast and everything.
Absolutely, man. It'd absolutely be my pleasure. The other thing is, I kind of have this dream, and maybe I'll put you on the spot for it right now. This photo that I showed earlier in my office, would you say Chicken Foot Lake or something like that? Yeah. I would like to go there in person. And I've got a little web series called Out Jakes that I do. Maybe, just maybe, I could drive down your way, and you could take me on a day or two backpacking trip and show me what this outdoor photography is all about. Give me a new appreciation for it. How's that sound?
It would be my absolute pleasure. We never went backpacking together, did we, in the Sawtooths?
We never did. And I didn't really camp much growing up. And I certainly did.
Even though you lived in Alaska.
Yeah, it's true, man. I didn't camp a whole lot growing up in Alaska, and then here in Idaho, I've definitely spent time in the outdoors, but a lot of it was like, getting on a boat at Lucky Peak and finding a dock and unloading my beer and hanging out around a campfire. It was not necessarily exploratory, nor was it void of people or excessive drinking. So, I mean, maybe maybe we could just get void of people and find out what happens in the woods, man. But it would be an honor to get an opportunity to go up with you and at least attempt to see the world through your eyes, and see what kind of magic you can capture while I'm with you.
So you haven't done wilderness backpacking at all yet?
No.
Oh, so I get to de-virginize you back there, huh?
I guess, man. It just depends. Like, you're gonna have to send me a list of what that means before we go. I don't like the way you said it. But yeah, man, that would be really cool. I mean, and depending on how difficult it is to get back there or whatever, maybe I could take my son as well. He's 7 years old, so. We could do it for sure. Yeah, let's work out the details of what that might look like in the coming months, and maybe late spring, early summer, we can make something like that happen.
It will be a gas. We'll have so much fun. You don't even know.
All right, brother. Well, hey, thank you again, Nolan Nitschke, the SierraLight.com for his galleries, also Mammoth Lakes. Thanks again, brother, for being on the podcast. It's so good to catch up with you.
Love you, dude. Talk soon.
All right, talk soon.